Varsågod.
That entry was very well planned. It was to draw your attention about the difference between the two professors speaking here, Chris Murray and me. If this was literature, you just heard Shakespeare. Here comes Disney. I have two tasks in my life. One is to explain the world, and one is to explain how much Chris Murray has contributed to a fact-based view on health by making the best modeling we can do where we lack data, and yes, integrating all the data that we have. Now, I'm trying to make a short overview that serves more like a background to what you discuss here than to contribute to the content. And I will start to talk in the area of population. Because to be frank, I'm not the most intelligent professor. And I'm not the most knowledgeable. But I think I'm the most cunning of them all. Because I go find areas where there are undisputed facts where we have failed to communicate them. That makes my task easy. And I can focus on it. And one of them is, strangely enough, is population. People, how many people we are. Look here. We have how many people do we have? I divided the world into 4 areas. And I will use this new Norwegian invention. It's a cursor, you know. A new cursor, and it will beat the former use of digital versions. I divided into America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. We made Australia Asians. They have to get used to it. A simple way of looking at how many are we? How many are we? We are 7 billion. 1 billion in America, 1 in Europe, 1 in Africa, and 4 in Asia. Remember, PIN code of the world, 1114. And what is going to happen? We know quite well. 2050, no more in Europe, no more in America. Well, 100 million more retired people in South America, 1 billion more in Asia, and then the Asian population, the fast population growth, will come to an end. They may grow a little or may even start to shrink. Africa will by then have added 1 billion people, and by the end of this century, or before the end of this century, the fast population growth of the planet will most probably be over. And by then, there will be 1 or probably 2 billion more in Africa. This is what we have to plan for in the future. And if I divide this into 500 million in North America and West Europe, we get what could be called the Old West. It's a very strong cultural identity. And that will be less than 10% of the world population. 80% of the world population will be living in Asia and Africa. The Indian Ocean will be the center of world trade, you know. And if anything, you know, buy pieces of the shore of India or East Africa. That is really where the center of the world will be. Bismarck once said that the most important macroeconomic, macro-political realities 150 years ago was that America spoke English. Of the future, the most important is that India speaks English, and such an eloquent English also that we heard this morning. So compared to the Swinglish that I speak. This we know will happen. Now, what do people know about this? I used to put this question. Sorry. When I was born, we were less than 1 billion children in the world. It increased to almost 2 billion by the end of the century. And then of these 3 lines, 1 is the best estimate of the UN population expert. The other 2 are made up. They are just fantasy. So how many children will there be by the end of this century? Will there be 4 billions, 3 billions, or has the number of children stopped growing? Well, the Swedish population think this. When we do a web survey together with Novus, the best company we could find, we did the same in Norway, same in Britain, same in the United States. It's amazing in these rich countries in West Europe and North America how the population have almost the same idea. And of course, looking at that, you know the right answer. It's this one. There's less than 10% who know what's going to happen. They are not entitled to discuss the future of the world. If you don't know the facts of the present, how can you talk about the future? why then is it like this? I will go on to another question here. In the world today, 30-year-old men report that they've been 8 years to school. Because this is the most important thing behind population growth. It's female education, women's education, and their possibility to determine how many children they should have. Then it is access to contraceptive also. But this is what is behind it. Now, how long do 30-year-old women, how long have they been to school? If men have been 8 years to school and women, is it 3, 5, or 7? Well, the data is compiled by Chris Murray's group, using all possible surveys in the world to know this. And what do people think when we put the question? Everyone gets the question. It's quite easy. It's about gender equity. This is what the Swedes say, the Norwegians say this, and the United States say this. And this is right answer. You just know the lowest number of Swedes answering, that's the right answer. Almost always like that. And no major between these countries, they are very equal. Here the Americans are doing better. We don't know what has happened, a miracle in Indian schooling, that you may criticize quality, but all children are to school. Congratulations. Congratulations, India. And this is not known. Then, does this mean we have gender equality? Not at all. It's almost worse now. Young women, older girl, teenage girl, come out of school, know their capacity, and then they are stopped, blocked, and exposed to violence. It doesn't make gender equality solved just by schooling. It's such a basic thing that you can go to primary school. Now, this is what media says. Let me not disclose the group I just lectured to, but it's leading media experts in Europe. So the problem is not that media fail to communicate, they don't know themselves. That's what the problem is. Look at next question here. I have here, what % of the 1-year-old children get vaccinated? That's also important for population growth. If children keeps dying, you can't convince a family of using contraceptives and having few children. You have to get this to work. So what does media say? They think that 20% of the world's children get vaccinated. The Swedes think this. Norwegians, who so honorably funded the Gavi vaccination program, with Tore Godal leading it, 10% think that there's 80% vaccinated, and these are the Americans, and this is the correct answer. You see, I can't explain why we have this sort of ignorance. It's so deep, it's so completely wrong. And then, about poverty. But this is what media thinks. Have the extreme poverty, the people living in extreme poverty, have that proportion of the world population doubled? Have it remained the same, or have it dropped to half? A quite clear question. There's a little difficulty between amount and percentage. But the Swedes thought this, Norwegians thought this, British this, and American here. And here, for once, Americans were the worst. If I would go ask the chimps, as I've said so many times, they would get 33%, wouldn't they? We are on sub-chimp level. That means that it's active ignorance. It's not lack of knowledge. It's active ignorance. And I can't explain it in anything else than a toxic combination of arrogance and ignorance about the world from the richer end. This is what happened. We know this. Europe, fertility rate started to drop early, but not fast. Then came America with this baby boom after the war in North and South. Then came Asia, nothing happened. Paul Ehrlich panicked, but then it went down like this. And we are now down to almost 2 children per woman in Asia. And here comes Africa starting to drop, and all experts agree that this is more or less what will happen. What we don't know is how we will level off here. The worst risk for big population, if you consider that the risk, is that you get gender equity in Asia. Because the Asian women would start catching up again with having, where we have now sub-replacement level in so many Asian countries and growing. Even in the most educated group in India, you see sub-replacement levels now of fertility. Now, this is the world average. So why don't we get this? I showed my bubble chart here, this time with money down here. Starting 1962, $1,000, $10,000, almost $100,000. Here's fertility rate, 2, 4, 6. And what you can see is that we learned that the developing world had little money and large family. The developed world, they had small families and lots of money. And the vulgar idea was, if you can convince them to have fewer kids, they will be richer. Huh? Or some said it won't work. What happens was this. Look when I start the world here. Look what it happened. Did they first get rich and then fewer kids? Or was it the other way around? Look here that China starts coming down and India is following slightly afterwards. Almost all countries drop down here. And here China hits the tarmac and they start with the economic growth. And here they go. Can you see? They're coming closer here. And India is following now. They fall at a very low economic levels. We have seen absolutely magical things happening. If I mark China there and I marked United Kingdom there, and I drag United Kingdom back into history and then forward like this, you can see that United Kingdom dropped to 2-child families with about $8,000 per person in purchasing power rate, whereas China did it on 1/10 of that. Today, the human mind, the human capacity, education, determination of good policy is a lot ahead of economy. People and countries are doing things much better per dollar they have today than was done in the old West Europe and North America. And what I could show you more here is, if I get my little note up there. This year we celebrate peak birth. There will probably, the projection, well, you don't know about the future. It may drop faster, it may increase a little more, we don't know. But according to the best mid-estimate, this is the year when mankind gives birth to most children. And this is not known. I can't understand why it's not communicated. And here we can see what that means. From today, the number of children will not grow. It's the adults that will continue to grow. We will add 4 billion adults to the world population. How could that be possible? This is one of these things where I'm cunning. It's an established fact, and it has not been communicated. Where will the adults come from? From outer space? Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? You get no more kids. The number of kids stay stable, and yet you get more and more adults. How would that work? Well, it works like this. Look here. I made the dolls here. Each doll here is 100 million. These are Europeans below 15, 30, 45, and 60. This is me, 65 years and above, Europe. Same amount in all age group. Here is the retired people in America that is lacking in South America. Look at Africa. Already 400 million below 15. Would you have 2-child family as of tonight in Africa, the population would still double. Look at Asia. You saw Asia dropping down. Now the number of children is not increasing. Even in India today. I can show you a special graph of India here. I have it. I did prepare it. Where is it? There. Look, this was in 1972. I studied at St. John's Medical College in Bangalore. And we saw these villages full of children in India. And everyone said, it's hopeless. India will never make it. You know, too many children. They are fatalists. Hindus and Muslims can't do these sort of things. Sorry, this is what I heard in school, back here in Sweden. I just had to be honest. And we had a population pyramid which looks like this. What has happened in India, we know. India has surprisingly good data on its population. Surprisingly good data. It happened like this. The number of children increased. Can you see the lower age group there? It increased, and now the number of children stopped increasing. Now they have your young generation who now go through school, and you need to expand that, and then you need work to have social stability. Otherwise, you can't do it. You need work at all cost. Otherwise, it won't go down. And then the number of children start decreasing. And you have, this is the mid-projection, which we don't know precisely. But India's made it. The number of children is no longer increasing in India. And the important thing with all this is to realize that what will happen in the future? Here we are. What happens to people like me? Gunhild, have you told them the truth about old people? What happens? They die. Yes, they die. She's an expert. She has studied old people's diseases. They die. So there they are. Now they're gone. What happens to young people like you? You get older, 15 years, but you get kids. They all die, the rest get older, and you get children. They all die, the rest get older, and you get children. And we are now in 2060. Look at that, at top, 2060. And then they all die, and you grow up, and you get children. Look, the number of children is staying the same, but that's because they are decreasing in Asia because of this drop in fertility to sub-replacement level and increasing in Africa. Both of this is a concern. And you can have more people in the world by having gender equity, because this is largely about gender equity. When women see that they can combine life with children and professional life, they will choose to have more children. So probably these estimates are too low for the population, not because poverty will remain in Africa, but because gender equity will come in Asia. We have seen the forces over the last year of young women in India and all over Asia now demanding more rights and demanding a better life. And this is what we then call the fill-up of adults, the inevitable fill-up of adults. So many who are concerned about the environment, and I'm also. I can agree completely with that. They have been saying we have to stop world population at 8 billion. You can't do that. That means killing, and it's not allowed. It's not even allowed to propose it. It's not even allowed to deny it when it has happened. We will be that. This is what we don't know so well. If poverty will stop in Africa, if gender equity will come there, then we hope for this. Of course, I want to be this one. I can stay on 15 more years to look at the statistics and see, about the borders of the planet, what will happen. It would be lovely to live long. Remember, PIN code will be 11145. Now, what we know is money. Money is the income distribution of the world, and it looks like this. The income distribution looks like this. Here we are. We had, in 1972, we had one big hump here with poor people in Asia and Africa. We had one with rich people here, mainly in Europe and America. And I will end by showing you how this camel world have changed. Population grow, and the middle got richer. They went out of malnutrition and infectious diseases. They went into obesity, cardiac disease, and bad diets. And the camel died, and we live in a dromedary world. In a dromedary world where we still have unacceptable extreme poverty here that needs its own policy. We vaccinate 80% of kids, 80% of the adults can read, 80% is fixed to a decent life where they are entitled and able to get non-communicable diseases, which is not a bad thing, because it's better than the alternative. It's dying young in infection and malnutrition, but it's still not acceptable. We want them to be healthier. And that's why this dominates the discussion, non-communicable diseases here in the middle. But this has to be finished also. Extreme poverty, destabilize the world, create a safe haven for Al-Qaeda and Boko Haram and worse things that we haven't seen yet. Thank you very much.